This is Zero, and today we're going to talk about the After Effects Award with Cerulean Gray. So I'll give Cerulean the chance to introduce himself real quick, and we'll get right into the topic.
No, greetings, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. I am Cerulean Gray. Um, I, the leader of the Gray regime. Our values are honor, valor, sacrifice, and esprit de corps. Um, I am an educator, scientist. Um, my target goal is to uh, help create a solid group of men that know how to cooperate with one another so we can properly oppose this artificial environment that we call America.
Okay, so I was curious about the After Effects Award. So what effects usually come with war, like maybe physically or psychologically?
Um, well, war in itself um, actually begins with a campaign of propaganda, a war of information. Um, to understand the after effects is to understand really how wars start. Most wars start over resources or lack thereof. Um, for instance, here in America, um, before mass domestic drilling for oil, um, we were quite dependent on foreign oil, specifically oil offered from the Middle East, Venezuela, places like these. Um, now, when those stores or supplies, um, fall into shortage or deficit, you have to find new resources, new way to source those. Um, now, how those resources deplete are either through the physical means or through an artificial means, which means the artificial means is when a country says, "Look, we will no longer sell you oil, or will limit the amount of oil that you can purchase." Um, that creates an artificial shortage. Um, in order to circumnavigate around that shortage, you have to source that oil that we're using as an example from somewhere else. Um, Not everyone that we try to source that oil from is going to be cooperative. Um, and as a result, it could lead to, say, war. Um, and that war could be done in many ways. Usually it begins with propaganda, an information campaign to um, make the people who we want a resource from to, look like they're bad, to dehumanize them. That's the first level of war, is the information war. The after effects of information war comes alienation, public alienation. Take, for instance, right now, even though there has not been physical combat in, say, North Korea, they are still facing the after effects of an information war. They are economically isolated from the world. And it's only been in recent years that, China has picked up the bill for them, right? Has China has been their gateway into international trade. Um, Now, the second phase of war, the after effects of the information war, usually end up with isolation, alienation. This creates a desperate situation, say, for a country that depends on resources from the rest of the world. It creates a desperate situation for them. Uh, and in times they'll grow more violent, they'll grow more willing, they'll grow more willing to commit all manner of atrocities, whether it be launching missiles or killing innocents. Um, that is kind of the after effects of war. When we get down to the physical war is the second and third order effects of information wars. Um, the physical war, take for instance, the bombing in Syria. Uh, now, in all war campaigns, there are three types of infrastructure that are always targeted. Those are communications, any kind of communications apparatus, the economic base and infrastructure, and of course transportation to limit people's mobility. These things are a part of the first stage of physical war, which is called the shock and awe. You destroy your communications towers. We destroy your you know mobility, your infrastructure as far as roads, freeways, bridges, um, uh, your landing strips for your planes, um, and then your economics. You're destroying things like other ships, shipping containers. If you're not able to commandeer them, you destroy them. Um, the banks typically get destroyed because you don't want people moving around or having mobility in war. Because the more you can cut them off from being able to, say, leave the country or um, move around from even district to district, um, you want to lock them down as much as possible, limit their mobility, limit their communications, and limit their finances. Now, what that creates is a destabilized population in which you have people with no money, you have people with no way to get to and fro, not even to check on loved ones, and no way to effectively communicate um, with other people. It sends them into a virtual post-apocalyptic or a localized uh, post-apocalyptic reality, and that means that all manner of atrocities occur because people are stuck in a survival mode where they're only thinking about their immediate selves and their immediate family members, where they have children. So they will be more willing to kill each other to get access to those things. And so, as a result, this is what's called an inversion of society, where it turns in on itself in order to for those who have the will to survive by any means, even if it means killing their fellow countrymen to do so.
Okay, okay, so how does the effects of wars, how do they have the similar effects on the soldiers, or are they completely different?
It does have a similar effect on the soldiers because the soldiers, depending on if it's the invading soldiers, because they're looked at as an occupying force. Um, Soldiers, especially if it's their first time in battle, um, or first time imposing on another country, um, it is a traumatic event, and that trauma sticks with them because now they're forced into a position to where um, we're going into a known hostile environment in which their lives are on the line at any given time, and then this is when the process of dehumanization by the soldiers onto the people they're imposing on starts because they're just looking at them as enemy combatants at that time, even if they're technically innocents. You see. And so it does have an adverse effect on both sides, the soldiers who are imposing and the victims of the imposer.
Okay, so yeah, cause I had seen like in like war movies or like shows like that. I mean, I know it doesn't grasp the full effects of war, but it kind of give you like some idea, like how like how like if you have like two sides fighting against each other, each side thinks they're fighting for the greater good, and they're both just fighting for whatever agenda the politicians have on either side.
Yes, for the invader, they're looking at this as this is my job. One second.
Okay.
Come here. Um, yeah, I actually was expecting a meeting today. Um, so yeah, on one side, on the invaders, they are looking at this as I'm sit here to do a job. Um, and because I have the full backing of my country, this must be right, right? If we
Mm,
don't get our hands on, say, these resources, the country suffers as a result, and that means that I have failed at my duty. On the victim side, they're looking at it like, yes, they are rightfully justified in say killing, opening fire, and opposing us to defend themselves. Both sides, one side is right and one side is wrong. It's just the way that soldiers are trained is to always, you know, make us think that we're on the right side, even when we're on the wrong side.
mm. Yes, yeah, it's kind of like the saying from Sun Tzu's Art of War, all warfare is deception. I guess that even applies to the soldiers that are fighting.
Indeed.
But yeah, if you got any more to say on it, I'll listen. Otherwise, I can cut the stream short because I know you have a meeting.
Yeah, all war is bad. Um, in the end, what happens typically, um, whenever say you have an invading force, it is American military policy to first of all limit their mobility, limit their communications, limit their access to economics. Um, this creates a desperate situation. Whenever ground forces land, they are to get what is called the high value targets. High value targets are basically arms bearing men between the ages of 14 and 30. Anyone that can bear arms is to neutralize them. Those are high value targets. And to uh, abduct, if you can get your hands on the high payoff targets, which are people within that that group of people that say are leaders, like tribal leaders or imams or whatnot. Um, if we get our hands on the high payoff targets, we can actually use those people to keep the others in line while we continue to take their resources at our will.
Okay, I got a question from Orion Star. It says, "Do you think a war will happen with bombs, or do you think future wars will be done in a cyber fashion?"
Well, it'll be a bit of both. Bombs, what you have to understand about bombs is that bombs are kind of like the last part of it. When bombs are part of physical war, they're part of the shock and awe. Future wars are going to be done with cyber the same way that they've always been done. When you talk about cyber war, you're talking about an information war. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm gonna cut it short right there. And I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last words? When they trying to get to a meeting.
Uh, no, I don't necessarily have any last words. We can actually continue this conversation at a later time. Um,
Okay.
I'm completely open for it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having you on, and shout out to Rice and Orion for coming on. And I guess I'll see you guys later.
Indeed.
Till, until next time.
All right.